Welcome back, everyone. I want to say thank you again to our fantastic panelists. We'll now begin the testimonial and keynote portions of our program. It is my distinct honor, on behalf of the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Study, to recognize Jodie Foster as the 2025 Radcliffe Medalist. Since her early success as a child actor in the 1960s and 1970s, Jodie has delivered iconic performances etched in cinema history. With more than 100 acting and directorial credits, she sits at the pinnacle of her art. She's a two-time Academy Award winner, a recipient of the Cannes Film Festival's honorary Palme d'Or, and a winner of the prestigious Cecil B. DeMille Award from the Hollywood Foreign Press, to name just a few of her honors. But Jodie's impact goes beyond these well-deserved accolades. In a career spanning some 60 years, Jodie has captivated audiences with her intelligent, challenging, and emotionally resonant performances and storytelling. Her protagonists have battled the justice system, stared down killers, explored the unknown, and fought for their loved ones. These complex characters have claimed the spotlight in an industry that, as we heard earlier, has too often subordinated women's perspectives. Jodie has used the power of art to engage with existential questions that define the human experience. And she's also harnessed her craft and the resources it affords her to focus our attention on critical issues and overlooked voices. For Jodie, television and film are not simply entertainment. Rather, they're vehicles through which artists and audiences grapple with the experiences that shape our lives. They can build connection, even empathy, challenging us to look anew at our own experiences and the world around us, and to examine the stories we tell ourselves and others. To quote Jodie, hopefully, an artist gets to the end of the movie or show and says, because I went through this, somehow I'm a fuller or better person. And hopefully by refraction, the people that explore this with me, the audience members, maybe they get to be better people too. Alicia Christian Foster, nicknamed Jodie by her three siblings, began acting when she was just 3 years old. Born and raised in California, she first appeared on screen in a 1965 commercial for Coppertone suntan lotion. Television roles followed, including appearances in classic TV series like The Doris Day Show and Bonanza. Jodie's acting credits soon included feature films such as the 1972 Disney movie Napoleon and Samantha, and Martin Scorsese's 1974 film Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. When she was 12 years old, Jodie was cast in Scorsese's landmark 1976 film, Taxi Driver, opposite Robert De Niro. She played the controversial role of Iris, a child runaway who becomes involved in sex work. Her experience in Taxi Driver, Jodie has said, changed everything for her as an actor. For nearly a decade, she'd always been told to just be yourself on screen. But this role was different. As she put it, I didn't really understand until I made Taxi Driver that there was such a thing as developing a character and investigating the meaning of the film. Jodie delivered a critically acclaimed performance hailed by one contemporary reviewer as a stunning blend of innocence and world-weary wisdom. The role earned Jodie her first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. She was just 14 years old. Remarkably, Jodie starred in 4 other films released that same year, including the comedy classic Freaky Friday and the gangster musical Bugsy Malone. She often portrayed what Vanity Fair journalist Joy Press described as tough, smart child and teen characters who created a space during the 1970s for a different kind of girlhood on screen. Jodie's mother, Brandy, managed her career, shaping the roles that Jodie accepted into her young adulthood. As Jodie's explained, she was very clear, you will be respected. Yet childhood success was not without its challenges. Jodie had long been her family's primary source of income, a heavy responsibility for a child. Fame also meant intense scrutiny and public interest in her private life. There's nothing normal, Jodie recently reflected, about being a public figure from the time when you were young, and there's a lot of negotiating around that to figure out how to be a whole person. As she navigated these extraordinary pressures, Jodie was also an undergraduate at Yale University. High school valedictorian and fluent in French, she'd excelled as a student and nurtured a love of words. At Yale, she studied literature, and Henry Louis Gates Jr. advised her senior essay on Toni Morrison's Song of Solomon. Jodie graduated magna cum laude in 1985. Her studies would carry into her acting, shaping the intellectual approach for which she is now well known. She's explained, I was always working between the head and the heart, always that strange balance between those two. Jodie had continued to act throughout college in order to pay her bills and to extend the career she'd always been told would end when she reached adulthood. Instead, Jodie soon solidified her place as one of the most gifted actors of her generation, with star-turning performance in the 1988 film The Accused. Her tough, nuanced portrayal of Sarah Tobias, a sexual assault survivor who demands justice in the face of misogyny, earned Jodie the Academy Award for Best Actress in 1989. 3 years later, she earned her second Best Actress Oscar for her legendary role as FBI trainee Clarice Starling in Jonathan Demme's The Silence of the Lamb. Jodie's Clarice was named one of the top 10 movie heroes of the past 100 years by the American Film Institute and has riveted audiences, critics, and scholars alike. She's a complex woman lead, undeterred in the male-dominated FBI, who faces down not one, but 2 serial killers. With his chilling stare, Anthony Hopkins' Hannibal Lecter quizzes Clarice on her life and recalls perhaps the most famously disturbing dinner menu in film. Lecter's villainy could easily have stolen the show, but as one film critic declared, the psychiatrist-turned-killer would have to be superhuman to wrest this film from Jodie Foster, and Lecter is only super deviant. Jodie's performance, the critic continued, goes the whole distance, steadfast, controlled, heartbreakingly insightful. After Silence, Jodie continued to build a reputation as an astute actor who meticulously selected roles, featuring smart, complex women as the story's protagonist. I couldn't possibly do justice to all of them. So I'll give just a few more examples that speak to the characters she has so powerfully brought to life. Jodie produced and starred in 1994's Nell, about a woman raised in an isolated mountain home who seemingly speaks a language all of her own. Jodie's performance was praised as transcendent and recognized with her 4th Academy Award nomination and a Screen Actors Guild Award. In 1997's Contact, she searched for extraterrestrial life as scientist Ellie Arroway. As Meg Altman, a recently divorced mother in David Fincher's 2002 thriller Panic Room, Jodie fought to save her daughter from home intruders. She was a corrupt lawyer and fixer in Spike Lee's Inside Man, and she sought violent vengeance in The Brave One, which she also executive produced. To quote a recent profile of Jodie in The Atlantic, "It's not a relaxing oeuvre." But for Jodie, that's part of the draw. Many of her movies, she's explained, ask, what do we do with the emotions and experiences that we have? Whom do we turn into? More recently, Jodie earned the 2021 Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress in a Motion Picture for her portrayal of the real-life lawyer Nancy Hollander in The Mauritanian, based on the memoir of Mohamedou Salahi. Jodie again earned critical recognition last year for her performance in the inspiring biopic Nyad, which tells the story of Diana Nyad, played by Annette Bening, and her historic swim from Cuba to Florida. Jodie earned her 5th Oscar nomination for her portrayal of Diana's coach and best friend, Bonnie Stoll. The film depicts not only a remarkable achievement, but also the unshakable love and strength of chosen family. And let me pause to say again, I'm so thrilled to have both Diana and Bonnie here with us today. In just the past few months, Jodie won a Golden Globe and an Emmy Award for her performance as Detective Liz Danvers in True Detective Night Country, which she also executive produced. The latest installments in the HBO anthology co-stars Kylie Reese as Detective Evangeline Navarro and centers on 2 mysteries in the fictional town of Enos, Alaska: the disappearance of 8 researchers and the unsolved murder of Annie Kotonk, a young Indigenous woman years earlier. Detective Danvers, as Jodie succinctly described, is awful. And that's intentional. Cynical and biased, Danvers isn't meant to be the star of the story, as Jodie's explained. The whole draw for me, she said, was to create something where the Indigenous voice is central. Any impulse and impact that I had developing my character was really, how does Danvers support their story? Behind the camera, Jodie has also made her mark as a director and producer. She once explained that the directing side is much truer to who I am. I'm a future thinker and a big picture person. Her first 3 directorial film credits each speak to important moments in her own life. They're personal to me, almost like a trilogy, she said. Jodie directed the first of the 3, Little Man Tate, when she was just 27. She also acted in the film, playing Dee Dee Tate, a single mother raising her exceptionally gifted son. The New York Times lauded Jodie's directing as terrifically self-assured, exclaiming, "It's apparent that she knows exactly what she's doing behind the camera." Little Man Tate dares to suggest that intelligence, so often mocked in movies, can also be celebrated. Jodie next directed and produced the 1995 comedy drama Home for the Holidays. And her 3rd directorial feature was 2011's The Beaver, a psychological drama that she's described as reflecting her own experiences with depression and spiritual crisis. For Jodie, the film held a powerful takeaway. Despite the roller coaster that our lives are and the heaviness of life and everything that we go through, people don't have to be alone, she's explained. Jodie also directed the 2016 film Money Monster, as well as episodes of prestige series like Black Mirror, House of Cards, and Orange is the New Black, for which she received a 2014 Emmy nomination for Outstanding Direction for a Comedy Series. But that's not all. Jodie has also helped recover and elevate women's contributions to film. For example, with her support, the UCLA Film and Television Archive was able to restore a movie by early writer and director Dorothy Arzner, and to hold screenings of several Arzner films. Jodie also served as narrator and executive producer of the documentary Be Natural about the trailblazing director Alice Guy Blaché, Guy Blaché, who is often credited as one of the first creators to make a film depicting a fictional story. In addition, Jodie has worked to protect and improve mental health and well-being. As I noted, she examined depression and its impact on a family in her 2011 film, The Beaver. In an interview about the movie for the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Jodie reflected, "We're born with comedy and tragedy, and that is in some ways the human condition." She continued, "Depression is a part of all of our lives. Everyone has experience with it, either in their own families or with friends. We cannot give up on one another." Jodie was also a benefactor of the 1994 Academy Award-winning short film Trevor, about a 13-year-old boy who attempts to take his own life after facing intolerance because of his sexuality. The film's creators later founded the Trevor Project, a suicide prevention and crisis intervention nonprofit for LGBTQ plus youth. In 2007, Jodie went on to support the Trevor Project's campaign to fund and expand call centers for its 24/7 suicide prevention helpline, giving what was then the largest donation in the Trevor Project's history. As we recognize her life's work, how best to summarize the impact of an artist of Jodie Foster's caliber? Perhaps the answer lies in the question Jodie asks herself when considering whether to sign on to a role: meaningless or meaningful? Well, we're all enriched by Jodie's unrelenting focus on the meaningful. And for that reason, I am thrilled to honor Jodie Foster as a 2025 Radcliffe Medalist. And now I'm pleased to introduce another trailblazing woman, Diana Nyad, who will deliver a testimonial to Jodie Foster's impact. Diana is an endurance swimmer, journalist, motivational speaker, and inspiration for the 2023 film Nyad. She made headlines worldwide in 2013 when, at the age of 64, and on her 5th attempt, she became the first person to swim from Cuba to Florida without a protective shark cage. Diana first gained attention for her open water swimming exploits during the 1970s, when she set numerous records, including the speed record for circling Manhattan Island. She went on to enjoy a successful career as a journalist and author, reporting for outlets including ABC's Wide World of Sports, The New York Times, and National Public Radio. She's the author of multiple books, most recently her memoir, Find a Way. And she's a co-founder, along with Bonnie Stoll, of the organization Everwalk, which encourages people to build community by walking side by side. Diana has been inducted into the International Women's Sports Hall of Fame, the International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame, and was named an Adventurer of the Year by National Geographic in 2014, among other accolades. Thank you, Diana and Bonnie, for being here today. And now please join me in warmly welcoming Diana Nyad to the stage.
Go on. Go on. Dr. Brown-Nagin, thank you so much for inviting us. Jodie, We wouldn't have missed it for the world. We're so proud of you and here to watch you receive yet another, but this time a monumental award in the Radcliffe Medal. We're just happy and privileged to be here with you. Everybody, stand up, Bonnie. This is Bonnie Stoll, AKA Jodie Foster. Come on. You know, when Bonnie and I arrived on the set in the Dominican Republic, where Jodie and Nanette were shooting the film, we spent quite a bit of time with them over a few months to all get to know each other. And when we arrived, the day we arrived, the first day we were there, Jodie had just finished shooting a scene for a number of hours, and she had a couple of hours free. Annette was busy. She was doing interviews over there about at the edge of the tent here. And Jodie and Bonnie and I went for a walk together. And as we were walking along, Jodie reached down under her T-shirt. She had a couple of necklaces that I guess were bothering her, and she put them outside, and she kept on talking, and Bonnie leaned in and she said, "That's odd. I have a piece very similar to that my father gave me." And Jodie said, "No shit, Bonnie. These are replicas of your necklaces." She said, "That's what we're doing here." And you might notice Annette over there, and she was wearing the Cuba T-shirt I always wear. She said, "Do you think she chooses to wear her hair that way?" No. And actually, years before the movie, I had run into Jodie just occasionally at, occasions, gatherings, and I thought maybe it would be, a good thing to educate all of you people from the upper echelon of academia as to how the lesbian social scene goes in LA. And this is what it usually is. There are a lot of attractive, talented people, and, we're pretty sophisticated. We just chat among each other, unless Jodie Foster's at the party. Then it becomes a little bit of a subtle but yet predatory situation. And so you try to stay cool, but if Jodie's moved over to that section, you kind of back your way around and hope to start a conversation. And the truth is, Jodie is absolutely oblivious to all of this. She's an egalitarian. She wants to talk with everybody on the face of the earth. She gives that mutual respect to everybody. She doesn't enjoy being fawned over. She will stand and tears come to her eyes if you're telling her a story about the recent loss of your dog. And one of the connections Jodie and I had during these occasional meetings was French. As we all know, Jodie is vastly talented as a linguist, and especially French. My mother came to the States from Paris at the age of 17, and in her wonderfully superior French way, she insisted that no American has ever or will ever speak a pure Parisian French. And I only wish my mother was still alive, Jodie, to introduce her to you. Because then she would have heard an American speak un français impeccable. It was just a couple of years ago when there was no cast yet, and the executive producer called me and Bonnie, and he said, "Are you sitting down?" So we sat down, and he said, "Annette Bening, Diana, just signed to play you." And we were over the moon, the iconic Annette Bening, and she delivered. The very next day, it's only 24 hours later, he calls again and says, "Are you still sitting down?" And we thought, oh no, it's like a Hollywood story, Annette Bening has already dropped out. He said, "No, Bonnie, Jodie Foster is going to play you." And we weren't cool at all. We were doing backflips, we were doing jumping jacks around the thing, and we were yelling out, "Jodie freaking Foster, are you kidding me?" So we all got to know each other, and I remember the first day Bonnie ever had her private session, her first conversation with Jodie. Bonnie admittedly has full-on ADD. I've known her for 45 years. We've never had a 4-hour conversation, but she was now 4 hours into talking to Jodie Foster. And finally, she calls me. I thought something, disastrous had happened. And I said, my God, what in the world have you been talking about for 4 hours? She said, well, one thing was, Jodie said, what's your favorite snack? And I said, chocolate chip cookies. And she said, no way, that's my favorite snack too. I said, okay, you were talking with this veritable genius for 4 hours about your snack preferences? Just as Annette was never a swimmer, and let's give her some huge kudos, she became that swimmer. Jodie has not been in her life, in sports and fitness, whatever, but she decided, Bonnie on that boat wore a sports bra and short shorts, and Jodie worked out just like Annette was working in the pool to make sure that she was going to pull it off, and she did. And I might say that past Radcliffe Medal winners, future Radcliffe Medal winners, and okay, we just saw Jodie's career, we saw her, dedication to all kinds of human rights and causes, but I guarantee you, no medal winner under this tent is ever going to have the rock-solid abs that Jodie Foster had in that movie. We went over to Jodie's house to watch an NFL game one day, and I thought, okay, this is my wheelhouse. I've been into the NFL since I've been a child, and I thought, well, Annette and Jodie, I'm going to have to give them a primer, on professional football. When we walk in the door, Jodie is so excited because she's just drafted Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson to her fantasy team. All through the game, she's lamenting about the horrible defensive line of the Steelers. She knows more. I've sat and watched NFL games with NFL players, and this day, this was a schooling I got from Jodie. And the great thing about Jodie is that she is unapologetic about her thoughts, her opinions, and it's never with an ego. It's never with some competitive edge. It's just out of true intellectual interest in the subject in front of her. And that's why you look for and you find such delight if you can get a sliver of a flaw in somebody like that. And sure enough, Jodie admits herself that math is not her strong suit. So Bonnie and I and Jodie's wonderful wife, Alex, we would play cards. We'd have evenings where we'd have dinner and play cards, and we didn't help her at the end of every round. We play a game where aces are worth 15, and twos are worth 20, and jokers are worth 30, and then all the other cards have their face value. And we would sit there in astounding amusement to watch Jodie stare at her hand. There are 3 sevens, and there's a queen, and there's a 2, and there's a 5, and you can see her eyes moving from one. There's that one, and maybe I should add that one to that one. And Jodie, that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. I bet everybody in this room has had the experience of watching a film, a television show, even with your intimate partner, and all of a sudden, by surprise, not really part of the plot, a hardcore sex scene comes on. And you sit there embarrassed, not talking, not touching, hoping it'll be over soon. Well, Bonnie and I were in Florence, and we had tremendous jet lag. We stayed up all night, and we watched television. It just so happened that the series True Detective was on. We watched every episode, one after the other, all night long. And sure enough, here it comes. There's our friend. All the way. And we are stunned. We're silenced. We didn't look at each other, and we didn't speak for an hour when that was over. I told Alex about this experience of ours, and she said, yeah, What do you think I felt? So, you know, Jodie, yeah, there's Silence of the Lambs, but that was real acting. All the accolades, you know, they could go on all day and all night. So, yes, we're all here to celebrate you and your brilliance. But when we finished watching the film for the first time, Bonnie's not a crier at all. She cried like a baby, and she turned to me with huge tears welling, and she said, "That was me. I just watched me for 2 hours." So Jodie, we'll never forget you for the acting chops, bringing your best self to that film. As a longtime director, working with two people who had never directed a feature film in their lives, you were the one who made sure that this film was going to be seen by millions of people, to dedicate itself to the 35 years that Bonnie and I pursued that big dream, and to make sure that millions of people all over the world don't quit on their biggest dreams. So today, yes, we congratulate you, but the truth is, we're here because we love you, and we're thrilled at our growing friendship. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Diana. That was inspiring. Wonderful. And now I'm very pleased to introduce this afternoon's conversation between Jodie Foster and my distinguished colleague, Henry Louis Gates, Jr., whom I'll introduce now. Skip's contributions and achievements are too extensive to list, so I'll provide only a few highlights. Henry Louis Gates, Jr. is the Alphonse Fletcher University Professor and Director of the Hutchins Center for African and African American Research at Harvard. He is an Emmy, DuPont, and Peabody Award-winning filmmaker, literary scholar, cultural critic, and institution builder. He's published numerous books, with his most recent, The Black Box, Writing the Race, was named by the New York Times as one of the 100 best books of the year. He's also produced and hosted many documentary films, including The Black Church, Frederick Douglass in 5 Speeches, Gospel, and Great Migrations. His groundbreaking PBS series, Finding Your Roots, is in its 11th season and was nominated for a Primetime Emmy. Thank you, Skip, for joining us. And now it's my distinct pleasure to welcome Jodie and Professor Henry Louis Gates, Jr. to the stage.
Wow.
Wow. Give it up for Dean Tomiko Brown Nagle. And Diana Nyad knocked it out of the park. Wow.
Thank you.
You were smoking. Who in the world would ever have thought that you and I, two Yaleys, who met when you were an undergraduate, and I was a baby professor in New Haven back in 1983, 84, would one day be sitting here at Harvard.
Not covered in beer.
Yeah. To talk about your extraordinary and inspirational life and career. Okay, so let me start with the burning question that everybody under this tent wants to know. Why Mother Yale and not Fair Harvard?
That's always one of those crazy personal questions. You go someplace and you just say, that's my place. But I always knew that Harvard would also be a part of my world. So many of my friends have gone here and so many of the people that I respect. And who knows, maybe I'll be back here someday, sort of like you did. You came through Yale to come to Harvard.
Yeah, I'm the Yaley who teaches at Harvard, right? Yeah. Okay, let's start at your beginning. But did you hesitate? I mean, you applied to both, you got into both. Trying to give up.
My mom was mad. My mom really wanted me to go here. Yeah. But I hesitated. Every institution has its own vibe, has its own feeling, and for whatever reason, I was drawn to Yale. But I clearly made a terrible mistake.
Well, speaking of your mom, let's start at your beginning. Brandy Foster. What was her story? And how did the opportunities that she did or didn't have as a woman of the preceding generation shape the kind of mother that she was to you and your siblings, do you think?
Yeah, I had an unusual upbringing. I'm the last of 4 children, quite a bit younger than the older 3. And my mom was a single mom. By the time I was born, my father wasn't in the picture. I never met him. And my mom and I did everything together. We were sort of like a couple. The 3 older ones were from a different generation. They were from the 50s. They were born in the 50s. And by the time I was probably 10 years old, they were all gone from the house. I started acting at 3, supporting the family by the time I was about 6. My brother had been an actor as well. And my mom traveled with me wherever I was, and she was my manager and the person who took care of me when I was on set. She guided my career. So in some ways, she chose every television show that I took, every movie. So in some ways, my career choices were about her vicarious need to make herself matter. She recognized that in some ways. I recognized that. And I think the thing that she wanted for me more than anything, because of her generation and her status in that generation, pre-feminist woman, she wanted me to be respected above anything else. And so she engineered, in some ways, propelled me in a career where she could feel respected because her daughter was respected. That was a big burden, a big responsibility. And yet I knew that it was, done out of love. She taught me how to choose my own material. She wanted more than anything for me to be very well educated. And as she said to me, by the time you're 18, your career will be over and you won't be an actor anymore. So what do you want to be when you grow up? A doctor? A lawyer? Once I did hit 18, and I did have some fallow years, but after that she said, actually your career is definitely going to be over by 40. So make as much money doing this, but a PhD, you'd be really well suited for a PhD. So she wanted all the things for me that she could never achieve, and I think that was mostly her motivation.
As when you have two boys.
Yes.
My 2 nephews.
One's over there.
Charlie's right there. Another Yaley.
That's right.
When you gave birth, and as the boys grew up, did your understanding of your mother and your understanding change and your relationship change?
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my mom was very complicated, and I'm pretty sure that as soon as I had children, I said I want to do it completely the opposite way from the way I was raised. But our mothers inhabit us, all of us, men and women, and her choices in life influenced my choices in life, influenced what I did and what I didn't do. And I especially appreciated her more as I got older and recognized what an extraordinary mother she was, not just for enduring me in my adolescent years, but also for understanding that there was only so far she could have gone and that it was up to the next generation to take the fight further. It didn't mean that she wasn't conflicted and full of mixed messages. She was. But she wanted me to be less messed up than her. And I think that's what I hope for my sons. You know, Little Man Tate, my first movie that I directed, is about, in some ways, two women raising a new generation of men, a new prodigy. And what you hope is that this new generation of men who are informed by women will in some ways be able to heal the wounds of the past and create a new generation of men that can soar beyond their lack of capabilities.
Yeah, well, let's hope so too, because a lot of work needs to be done on that front. So let's start with let's start professionally by what's considered by most critics your breakout role.
Okay.
Iris, teenage sex worker and taxi driver. 1976, you were 12 years old.
Yep.
What did your mother think about you playing that role? And was that tell us about that conversation. Was it a difficult decision? Did you think you'd be typecast? Did anybody think that your career would be over?
Yeah, well, we're going to go back to my mom again. I had already been working for quite a while. I'd made a lot of movies. I'd made more movies than Scorsese at that point, or Robert De Niro.
Whoa.
But my mom was self-taught. You know, she did graduate high school, but she didn't go to college, and she read books. She devoured books on history and loved foreign films. And every day from school, she would take me to a foreign film. She wanted me to speak other languages, and she wasn't able to, so she plopped me in usually French, but foreign films, Italian, German films, so that I would hear other languages and get interested in that. So she'd seen every Scorsese movie, and honestly, I'd already done Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore with him. She thought that he was the great genius of our generation, and so she couldn't have been more thrilled. A lot of people at the time, I think, I don't know if they questioned her, but certainly the culture was questioning the idea that a young person would be subjected to subjects like this. And in fact, the Board of Education wanted to stop me from making the movie. So I had to prove in front of a judge, basically, that I was competent enough to understand that I was not a prostitute. And so they put me in front of with a psychologist and, you know, asked me a bunch of questions, and I guess that was how I was able to do Taxi Driver.
Well, how did that demand come about?
I don't know. I think it was, it was at a time where A Pretty Baby had just come out with Brooke Shields, and I think people were questioning whether it was a smart idea to have young women especially dealing with adult topics.
Well, I'm curious to hear about what you learned about acting from the stories passed down and what you were able to observe by working with the elders, like De Niro and Scorsese.
Well, you know, as I said, I didn't really think I wanted to be an actor when I grew up because it seemed kind of like a dumb job. It seemed that all you did was learn lines and then say the lines. And then a director would say to you, act like yourself. And I thought, well, that is not a career. That's not going to be enough for me. At 12, when I did Taxi Driver, Robert De Niro took me aside. He did improvisations with me. He worked with me. And I suddenly understood, my 12-year-old mind was blown, and I suddenly understood that acting was more than just saying lines and being yourself. And I recognized, and I was very hard on myself, I recognized that it was my fault because I hadn't given it enough of myself, that I hadn't looked at it the way I might look at a book or the way I might look at a painting, that I hadn't really looked at it as an art form. And that it was up to me to challenge myself to go beyond. That was me at 12, really.
Wow.
And, you know, kind of, you know, whipping myself and saying, like, what's the matter with you? Why didn't you take this seriously when you were 10? And so that movie really changed my life. Really was a moment where I said, you know, maybe acting could be challenging enough for me to do as a grown-up person.
Huh. Wow, that's a great story. Did you tell them that? Did you tell them what a shaping influence that experience was?
Yeah, I have seen them over the years, and I'm always so grateful. I always make sure that I thank them for, just modeling what artistry could be. Scorsese especially, I'm sure all of you have a vision of who Martin Scorsese is. And at the time, he was, he's a little guy. He had a little twirly mustache, and that he twirled constantly. And he never stopped cackling. He was so funny. And he would sit behind the camera, right in front of the camera. We didn't have video monitors then like we do now. He would sit in front of the camera. He would look at us and do 50 takes, 25 takes, huge amounts of takes. And every single time he would have to stop himself from laughing. He would put his hand over his mouth and stop himself from laughing because he was so interested in what the actors were doing. It was like he was inside their body. Uh-huh. And I'll never forget, and I hope that I bring that to the work that I do as a director.
Yeah, but wasn't that unsettling to have somebody bust out laughing at your your take?
In the old days, you learned that, right? We didn't have video monitors, and we were used to having people stare at us while we were having an intimate moment with somebody next to us. So the ability to be able to be in the moment and outside the moment watching at the same time.
One of the things for which I think that you're most deeply respected is your educational pedigree.
Yeah.
Lycée Français.
I knew he was going to ask that question.
The Lycée Français, and then Mother Yale. What did your experience as a student and as a fluent French speaker awaken you to in terms of life, in terms of ideas, in terms of possibilities? I often worry about actors who didn't go to college, and especially about athletes who don't go to college.
Yeah.
So talk about the role of both of those.
Well, I don't know that I worry about it. I think recently I really come to understand that what college is how you spend those 4 years. Undergraduate is how you spend the years between 17 and 22. Where were you? What were you doing? Who were you talking to? What were you learning? It seems like the most fecund time in my life, and I'm so grateful that I was surrounded by a bunch of idiots that loved me, put their arms around me, and we talked until the wee hours about everything. I didn't grow up that way, and I grew up in Los Angeles, and we didn't talk. We played volleyball, or if something was really going wrong, we might play Scrabble. But there was not a lot of talking about things. There wasn't analysis. There wasn't an interest in going deeper because it just wasn't part of our culture. I'm sure it was there. There was a desire for it, but it just wasn't a part of it. So for me, the revelation of going to college was being surrounded by brilliant people who were at the beginning of their life, that had all of the excitement of what knowledge could be, and learning from them. Actually, I hate to say this, and I really hope you're not insulted, but I don't remember anything I learned in undergraduate. Not one thing. But I'll never forget being surrounded by those people, and being surrounded by those professors as well, and being surrounded by, that's how I grew up and beyond who I was as a Los Angeles kid.
And you went through a profound trauma as an undergraduate at Yale.
I did.
Would you mind talking to us about that and how you got through it?
And for obvious reasons, I've chosen over the years never to really speak publicly about it. Really more as a strategy to have a career that was more than just being a historical anecdote. So when I was 18. Some of you don't know this. When I was 18 and I was at Yale freshman year, a deranged man was obsessed with me. He bought a lot of guns, traveled across the country, impersonating friends of mine, and then finally found himself at Yale, where I guess he telephoned me and had some correspondence towards me, and then went and shot the president, who was Ronald Reagan at the time. And some people in his entourage as well, some gravely. Yeah. That was a big upset in my life, as you can imagine, not as much as in the lives of some of the people who were shot, of course. But it definitely turned my world upside down. I was a freshman, and I was in the middle of doing a play, and decided that the show must go on. So I also decided to go back on stage, even though I was in hiding, and I couldn't live in my room. I couldn't go to classes. I had bodyguards 24/7. So yeah, I don't usually talk about that time because it was a tumultuous time, and I wanted to be. Here's where my mom came in as well. I wanted to have a long career where I was known for myself and for my work.
Yes.
And I wanted my identity to be about what I produced. I just didn't want to be that girl who was chosen abstractly by an insane man to be a footnote in history. Yeah.
No, I understand that.
Yeah.
But what I remember is that the entire community, I don't know if you felt this or were aware of it, but those of us on the faculty, that your fellows embraced you.
Yeah.
They did their best to support you. And I think that was Yale's finest moment as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, it really was. And, Bart Giamatti, too. Love
Yeah.
him. And it was trial by fire. I became an adult really quickly. And I learned some good lessons and some bad lessons. I think the good lessons were you do have a community, which I didn't really understand. The bad lessons, obviously, is, now you can trust no one. But also, and another good lesson was that I looked at the kind of career that I wanted to have, and I really understood that I did not want to be famous, that I did not want to be a celebrity. And I needed to design a career in acting that was more than just being famous, that it was only worth it if I could do meaningful work. And so I really took a hard tack that if I was going to continue in the film world, that I wanted to make sure that my work stood for me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And, well, then how did you manage to do that and raise a family and two boys who are lovely and normal? More or less, Charlie.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there are a lot of protections, a lot of survival tools that go into creating a whole person that can withstand and who has the, what's that word that starts with an R that people have used twice? Resilience.
Uh-huh.
And some of those survival tools are difficult to maintain and are, they might not look good to everybody else, but I had to keep myself safe. So sometimes I say that I felt when I was younger that I got a straw that I built, and I was floating underwater, but I had a straw that I could breathe. You design straws that allow you to survive intact, and some of that was really to understand what privacy means. Uh-huh. So the kids were raised in a really private way. Charlie, for whatever reason, Charlie, were you dumb? Yes. He did not know that I was an actor until he was about, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8. I once took him to a movie set, and they were constructing something, and I thought it would be fun to give him a little tool belt. So I gave him a little plastic tool belt, and he walked around. Actually, you were even littler. I think you were 4 or 5. He walked around with a tool belt, and from then on, he thought I was a construction worker. And I remember the day when he was 6 or 7, and I said something about it. He said, "But wait, don't you make buildings?" And I said, "No, I don't make buildings." "Why do you think I make buildings?" He goes, "But you gave me the tool belt."
Well, you make worlds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you make worlds. We met because of a mutual love of literature.
Yes.
And you wrote your senior essay, as Tomiko said, on Toni Morrison. So first of all, why African American studies? A nice white girl.
I'm so happy that you're asking me that question. And it's really important for this audience to hear. Back in 1983, 82, whatever it was, people would say, "I don't understand African American studies. Why would you study Afro-American literature? Why would you study African literature?" I remember walking on the street when I told my mom that that's what I had decided that I was going to major in. And as forward-thinking as my mom was, she was so mad at me. She said, I sent you to this fancy school. You got all A's, and you're going to study African American literature? It was difficult at that time to have her understand what I understood. And so the answer that I give when people ask me that question is, because I'm a well-educated person.
Oh, my girl, that's what I'm talking about.
Because I want to be a part of the canon of American literature, because I am interested in literature that is as emotionally important as it is intellectually, and that is of, when you think of American literature, when you think of, is there one genre or type of American literature? We don't really have one, except for maybe the Harlem Renaissance, or potentially African American literature. So for me, it's the shining light of literature. And yeah.
Amen to that. So here's the story. Toni Morrison and I met. Before she was Toni Morrison, Charles Davis hired her to teach at Yale. And our offices were adjacent. I was 26. I was still at graduate school at Cambridge, deciding whether I could ever finish a PhD or I should go to law school. And she would drive herself up from the city. She was working as an editor. And Toni could be mean. I mean, she did not suffer fools at all. So a few years later, here you come. And you want to write about Toni Morrison. And I thought it would be a great thing, a great boon, a great additional, it would give you additional insight if you sat with her. But she wasn't granting interviews. So I did not tell her who you were. I wrote to her and said I had a student whose name was Alicia.
That's right.
I did not say Jodie Foster. There was no internet. She couldn't. And I described you. And she said, game.
Yep.
And you went down to her home. Take it from there.
Greatest moment of my life. Greatest moment of my life. Meeting somebody that was really my creative hero and who I spent all this time now studying her work, and the work resonated so much with me, connected so much with me. And I don't know, maybe you have all had this experience more than once. I feel like I've only had it a handful of times in my life where you meet with somebody and you do come with some preconceived ideas about their work, and within the first 10 minutes, they, one by one, take all of your ideas and they confirm each one of them.
Wow.
And it was just thrilling. It was just a thrilling experience. A great afternoon that I got to spend with her. I got to go out to her jetty. She had a little jetty that she went out on the pier, and she'd sit at the end on a kind of like a little bench and look out at the Hudson. And I got to do that. That's really one of the highlights of my life.
Yes, our house in south of Nyad.
That's right.
You can see the Tappan Zee Bridge.
That's right.
And you interviewed her, and you taped it.
Yep.
It is the best interview Toni Morrison ever got. And it drives me nuts that even after Toni Morrison is dead, she won't publish it.
Yeah. Well, Uncle Skip, he's always bringing this one up. I never thought I would be an actor. Okay, I have to be honest. Yes, my mom said, you won't be an actor after 18. Then she said, you won't be an actor after 40. I just didn't think I had the personality. I thought it was a family business that I fell into. And the truth is I really don't have that personality. My mind doesn't work that way. It's not in my DNA. I wasn't born that way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a cruel job to have given a child like me. I'm not a box of tears. It's not easy for me to live with my emotions on the outside of my body. It doesn't happen. Things get branded through my brain first. Mm-hmm. If there was a design for me, it was to be a writer, because that's how my mind worked. But there's something about film that allows you to see the big picture and be able to identify the intellectual process of what a film can do, then create seams of emotional understanding, and then the best part, erasing those seams. So that those two things become an organic entity that you present lovingly after years and years of work. You present to an audience and say, here is an organic being that is just going to walk and talk the way they do. And that audience has a response and has a relationship to this being that you've created that is no longer part of your body, that walks the way it walks. And, that's really the gift and the blessing of being a filmmaker, but it's also what is the blessing of being somebody that is a strong intellectual person that has been forced to become an emotional person. To combine those two things, it's a balancing job that you hope that people do in their lives, but as an artist, if you can't do that, you will sink to the bottom of the ocean.
What do you think that your education gave you that a career in film itself wouldn't have?
Well, I always say to people, when I went to Yale, I learned how to read, which doesn't sound very good. But that really is it. That's all we're learning. We're learning how to read. It doesn't matter whether you're a scientist or whether you're a dancer or whether you're a literature major. The idea is to see something and experience it and go deeper than the surface. And the deeper you go, the more understanding that you have and the more of yourself that you bring to that process. So that's where I learned to read. And however, may I just say, in defense of the people that don't have a college education, that don't have the opportunity, or that don't get to spend those 4 years here, because college education isn't meant for everybody. It really is about where you are between the ages of 17 and 22.
Yeah.
And, I had the blessing to be able to find myself in New Haven surrounded by these amazing people, but I have friends who, headed off to South America and lived in villages and learned more than I ever could. And it really doesn't matter which institution of life that you find yourself in. It really is about self-discovery and how yourself relates to community. And whether you find that at Harvard or at Yale or in the backwoods or wherever, it really is about those 4 years.
As long as you're a learner.
Yeah, as long as you're open to change, to changing yourself. As my friends always say, we are transforming all the time. That's our job as humans. And wherever you are is about what transformation you take, what step you take deeper towards yourself.
Your career spanned decades. It's also spanned so many aspects of the industry. I mean, acting, directing, writing, producing. Jodie, when you first started on this journey, how far could a brilliant young woman like yourself expect to go in the industry?
Not very far. They quoted me before when I was growing up. I never saw another woman. Sometimes the lady who played my mom, or sometimes the makeup artist, but usually not. Most of the makeup artists were men. And sometimes a script supervisor, because that was a very difficult didactic task that most men can't do. But I was surrounded by brothers and fathers, and I didn't have a father. And so for me, it really was these groups of men who taught me how lenses worked, and they taught me, why an edit works or why it doesn't work, or they taught me how to whittle wood. Or a technician once, when I was just really having a hard time on a movie, he taught me to throw the I Ching. These brothers and fathers raised me. And so when I came into the industry, when I came into, I forget what the person who was on the panel called it, maybe the institution, I was all in. These were my brothers and fathers. And I was their prodigal daughter, and they gave me opportunities that they did not give other women. Because they knew me, and they worked with me, and they knew that when they said, be here at 7:45, I was there at 7:45. And they knew that when we entered into a conversation or a handshake, and they said, can we accomplish this together? I said, you have my word, and I did those things. And it's why, by a miracle, I was not considered a risk as a director. Most women are seen as a risk to our community, and it's why there are very few women directors, why there are very few women directors of color, certainly, people of color, is that psychologically, the white male experience sees others as risks. And for whatever reason, because I had been a part of that institution, I was a risk worth taking. So I can't help but be grateful to them, because I don't believe, and I don't think any of us believe, that it's some plot that the white men that were it certainly can't be, because all of the white women who took their spots did exactly the same thing. The implicit bias that came from their mentors translated to them, and they hired no women either for many, 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 many years. So it is a psychological moment where it's difficult to give the job, give that first opportunity to a female director, to a black director, when he or she doesn't look like you.
Well, how does one get over that?
They get an education, and it's our responsibility, when you do finally make your way into the institution, to learn how to, I'm so sorry that we have to do this, to learn how to teach people with love and compassion, to say, it's not your fault that you don't understand this, but let me explain this to you in a way, because we're all in the same boat. We have to teach them.
How is... Are there ways in which being a woman has helped your career, and simultaneously ways in which being a woman has delimited your career?
Oh yeah, I think there are ways that it really has helped my career, because a lifetime of very small microaggressions and having to bend myself as a pretzel in order to accommodate into spaces where normally I wouldn't be welcome, has allowed me to be a kind of leader. Once I became a leader, a kind of leader that can really take 175 people on a crew and say, we're in this together. We're a group. And yes, in the hierarchy, I'm your leader, but I want to hear from you. I want you to tell me what your parents taught you when you were a kid, or what adventures you had. And I'm going to give you credit when that happens, because I was raised differently. So that really is an advantage, I think, on film sets, when you have the experience of having been othered, to be able to bring people together in a cohesive environment that allows community spirit to inform the movie. Especially when you're making ensemble movies, personal films, I want the personal experiences of the people that I'm working with. I want to take them and then give them credit, but bring them to the movie. And that hasn't traditionally been taught. That's been taught to women, but that hasn't traditionally been taught to men. Where it hurt me, sadly, I have a leadership style that sometimes is neither male nor female, traditionally, and sometimes it's hard for executives and producers to recognize. So, for example, I'm working on a film as a director, and somebody wants me to do it their way, which is normal. There's always a lot of people that want you to do it their way. And if I say, actually, I disagree with that, and I don't think that's the path that I'm going to go, they're very confused as to what's the next step to get their way. And sometimes the next step is, well, you're a woman, so I'm going to make you cry, and then you're going to do it my way. And that doesn't work with me. And maybe it would be better if it did. Maybe we would have maybe some things would work better if they did. Or the bullying tactic of, wow, she really still won't make it work. She really still won't do what I said. So let me try really, really making it terribly uncomfortable for her. And that still doesn't work. Because, and partly because of my education, I work in the middle area where, who was it that said that they wanted to, it was Mira, who said, yes, that's where you said that you wanted everybody to do what you wanted to hire somebody who was willing to do what you said, and you wanted to make sure, you say it, what is it? What is it? Tell me.
I said that I'm a good team player so long as I have the last word.
Exactly. Good team player as long as I have the last word. Yes.
Diana introduced
Yes.
the subject I was going to raise, your sexuality. How has, first of all, I think you came out in 2013?
No.
No?
No.
When did you come out?
Well, I don't know. You know, we should put this to the audience of what is coming out. What is coming out? I mean, for most young people, that means talking to their parents, talking to the people they love, means talking to the people at work, and living their life in an authentic way. But apparently in Hollywood, that's not true.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think I have a different understanding of what that means. But a lot of people would say that the first time that it was talked about publicly, not by me, by the way,
Right.
would have been 2013.
Were you could give it up for that. But were you worried about, I mean, how did you negotiate that? How did you negotiate your fears or concerns about your career and this intimate aspect of yourself becoming public?
You know, it's hard. It's hard because I'm 62 years old, almost 63 years old, and it's hard in a room full of people that might be in their 30s or 40s or younger. It's hard to give people a real understanding of what things used to be like.
Uh-huh.
What was it like? So, and I'm sure you've had that same thing. You know, what was it like growing up in West Virginia in the 70s?
Sure.
And it's really difficult to tell people that are 20 years old, well, I acted this way or I said this because that's what it was like in those years.
Right.
It's hard to bring the past to bear to people that haven't lived through that. My number one concern, as I said to you, was surviving intact, emotionally and intellectually. What I didn't want to do was end up dead in a hotel room with a needle in my arm.
Yeah.
And part of that meant that for me to survive intact, that I needed a kind of emotional safety and privacy that was unusual for the film business. I don't know that I would survive the film business now if I was the new young actors. I don't know that I would have continued. I think I would have quit. I don't think I would have survived it intact. But in those days, the way to survive that was to say, I am off limits. You can't have me. You can have all this part that I give you. You can have my art. You can have my honesty. You can have, I will enter into trust with you at work. I will be a professional. You can count on me. But you can't have all of me. So that was off limits. And that's hard to explain why that was necessary to people that are younger. But that was necessary for me to survive.
Well, I understand that, but why has it changed? Why would that be impossible for a person to do now?
Well, it should be. And it's possible for people to make that choice because of the pioneers that came before me.
Right.
Because of the pioneers that were pelted with tomatoes, for lack of a better analogy, for the people who made it possible for me to be sitting here. Certainly for lesbians and gays who came before me, it is possible for me to stand here and for me to have stood at 35 years old and said, my life is off limits and you can't have it. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I have to handle with, what I have to deal with my sons, of trying to explain to them what life used to be like when you did not see interracial couple walking down the street hand in hand.
Oh, yeah.
That was not possible.
Oh, my God. I have this built-in reaction that when I look out the window and see, particularly a black man and a white woman, I want to roll the window down. Brother, don't do that. You do that in private, but you can't do that in public.
Right.
No, I
like
really
we
do.
say to our children. I mean, when I look at my kids' life, I don't want to bring fear to their life. Yeah. The way my mom did to me, I don't want to bring fear to their life, but you want them to live. You don't want them to be hurt.
Right.
So anyways, I lay that out to you to say, you know, I'm a 62-year-old woman and I grew up in a different time. And I'm so proud and so encouraged by the transformation that our cultures have made, and by some tiny part that I hopefully have brought to the equation to help that. I wish I could have done more, and but I only could do as much as I could do.
Oh, you've done
And
that.
now it's up to you guys.
That's great. You've opened so many doors, it's fair to say, for many who came after you. Has your perspective changed on the industry with almost 60 years of experience in front of the camera?
Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, it's so much better now. I think, and I'm sure every profession feels this way. You know, you try so hard when you're young, especially in an art form. You really do understand that the biggest problem that I had, not problem, but I think the biggest obstacle that I had to overcome was being anxious and self-conscious and not being confident. So now at 60, I feel like I'm having more fun making movies as an actor than I ever did, because I finally reached an age, and it might be hormonal, you know, where I really don't care. And I have faith and confidence that if I learn my lines and I know my character, chances are, and even if I don't have a plan as to what I'm doing, I always have a plan, but even if for whatever reason I can't find a plan, chances are I will figure it out on the day. And the ease and the comfort of knowing that you don't have to kill yourself in order to find honesty and authenticity, and that the real work is the work of living, and that's what you bring to the table. When I walk onto a set with young people that are 22 or 23, my contribution, my great contribution of wisdom, is to just look over there and take their hand and go, don't worry so much. It'll be fine. And that sounds kind of silly, but you know, that Zen mastery is really having confidence enough in your soul and your ability to connect to the truth, the part that's conscious and the part that's unconscious, that you don't need to, you know, put on a funny red nose and twirl around 400 times and, you know, I don't know what other things method actors might do in order to get themselves. But there's a whole level of anxiety that you don't have to entertain anymore.
I want to close by, first of all, wishing you an early Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
My friend. And I want to ask you a couple more big questions. As a filmmaker, as a mother, as a supporter of just causes, what are your hopes for the present moment? What are your fears for the present moment?
Oh, God. Who knew that question was going to be the toughest question ever asked? I think I wouldn't have thought that 10 years ago. The hardest thing now is being tired. I think a lot of us are tired and worn out and sad. And that is really hard. And what I hope is, with this new generation, we can find the kind of energy to fight and to continue the fight that people have been fighting for generations. To just be energized. I think that's what we need, is a kind of energy. And what I hope for people now is that they take the gloves off. At Harvard has shown that recently, and
Right on.
but also with this group of thinkers in these rarefied places where the intellect and the ability to connect is really revered above all else, to really understand that you have the power to use love as a guiding principle, and to be strategic. And when somebody says to me, I'm exhausted because I've been playing whack-a-mole all day with 1,000 different things that are wrong, I say, stop it, choose one. Save yourself, make sure you take your Wheaties and your vitamins, and then choose one. And if we all choose one and dedicate ourselves 100% to it, then hopefully we won't be whacked by everything that's coming at us.
We could go on. We could go on forever, and I wish that we could, but I'm afraid of Tomiko. Ladies and gentlemen, now you know why she was the most brilliant student I have ever taught. Please join me in warmly thanking Jodie Foster for her transformational and inspirational work.
Thank you, Jodie and Skip, for that fascinating discussion. Yeah. And it is now my honor to present you, Jodie, with the 2025 Radcliffe Medal. I'll read the citation. She is an individual of keen intellect and insight who illuminates the complexity of the human experience. She is a gifted actor and filmmaker whose commitment to craft calls us to engage with her work rather than the details of her personal fame. She is a courageous artist whose nuanced portrayals challenge superficial representations of women and our conceptions of strength, honor, and dignity. Jodie Foster, in admiration of your groundbreaking career and remarkable impact, I bestow upon you this Radcliffe Medal. Wow, please join me on a final round of applause for our medalist, our moderator, and all our distinguished speakers. Thank you for enduring the weather. I hope it was worth it. I know it was. And this concludes our formal program. I hope you'll join us for a community reception. Thank you for being here, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.